Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, our explainer is unpacking the fascinating macro to micro journey of facility location. Have you ever wondered why a massive factory is built way out on the edge of town, while a specialized tech firm sits right smack in the middle of a bustling city center? Well, I can promise you it's not by accident. It is the result of a highly strategic funnel.
Honestly, I like to call this the million-dollar mistake. Selecting a location is this massive, strategic, long-term commitment. It's a non-repetitive decision that essentially forms the physical anchor for a company. As our source material points out, a poor location choice doesn't just sting once. No, it becomes a constant source of higher costs, logistical nightmares, and even dissatisfied employees. Once that facility is actually built, relocating is incredibly challenging, thanks to all sorts of economic, political, and sociological hurdles. It literally dictates a company's long-term profitability.
So, here is our roadmap for today. 1. The high stakes of location. 2. Defining the modern facility. 3. Phases of location selection. 4. City, suburb, or country. And finally, 5. Strategic location analysis methods.
Section 1. The high stakes of location, costs, and revenues.
So, put yourself in the shoes of a CEO making a massive, long-term commitment. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing how your decision is basically being pulled by two massive forces. On the inside, you've got internal factors, your technology, capacity, finances, and workforce. But on the outside, you have external realities, economic, political, and social conditions. This single location decision locks in a massive chunk of your fixed and variable costs, which ultimately dictates the revenue you can even generate. The interplay between your inside capabilities and those outside realities directly influences the pricing of your goods and services. It's absolutely crucial.
Section 2. Defining the modern facility. A paradigm shift.
Right, so here we see a true paradigm shift. When we say facility, we're no longer just talking about smokestacks or giant steel mills. In modern location theory, a facility is any physical entity relevant to the analysis. So we're applying these exact same high-stakes principles to the everyday service systems we all rely on. Hospitals, banks, fire stations, blood banks, you name it, even local recreation centers. Location theory dictates how effectively all these crucial services actually reach us.
Section 3. Phases of location selection. The systematic process.
To avoid that million-dollar disaster we talked about earlier, organizations absolutely do not just throw a dart at a map. They use a highly structured process. Let's move to the steps and see how this builds. Decision makers start by defining precise objectives. That's followed by some really intense data gathering. Then they identify a list of potential alternative locations, evaluate those alternatives against their specific criteria, and finally, select the absolute optimal location. It's a very systematic narrowing down of options.
And as they narrow things down, they shift their focus across two distinct phases. Phase 1 is all about selecting a broad general territory, prioritizing macro factors, things like proximity to markets and raw materials. But as they zoom into a particular community in Phase 2, those broad macro factors kind of drop off, and localized metrics like community attitude become the absolute deciding factors. It's like a giant funnel.
Section 4. City, suburb, or country. Finding the right fit.
Okay, so once we're in Phase 2 and looking at a specific community, we run into some interesting micro scenarios. First up, the city location. Think about a multi-floor bank or a bustling tech headquarters. They thrive here because their primary needs are an adequate supply of highly skilled employees, rapid public transit, and just constant close contact with suppliers and customers. Plus, their processes are heavily dependent on established city utilities and good banking systems.
But what if you need a bit more space? Well, enter the suburban location. Out here, a business gets the best of both worlds, really. They get a large plant site that is still close enough to population and transit centers, but they completely escape strict city zoning restrictions and those painful city parking taxes. Importantly, it's significantly easier for a plant to expand out in the suburbs than it is within a cramped city grid.
Now, what if your needs are a little more extreme? That leads us to the country or rural location. If a company has, say, dangerous production processes, needs massive volumes of clean water, or perhaps requires protection against sabotage for a highly secretive process, a rural area is perfect. And this brilliantly illustrates why certain operations just can't be near a city. The country offers massive space for expansion, lower unskilled labor costs, and it keeps hazardous or secretive operations safely isolated.
Section 5, Strategic Location Analysis Methods, the math behind the map.
We've reached the bottom of our funnel, where decision-makers turn qualitative needs into hard mathematical choices. Experts rely on a mix of these 6 core objective and subjective methods to finalize their specific plot of land. Now, we aren't going to get bogged down in heavy algebra today, but let's quickly look at the brilliant logic driving these models.
First up is the factor rating method, which is probably the most widely used tool of the bunch. Think of it kind of like hunting for a new apartment. You list what matters to you: rent cost, commute time, nearby parks, and you assign a weight to each based on its importance. Businesses do the exact same thing. They take factors like labor costs and infrastructure, score each potential location, and multiply by those weights to find the highest total score. Makes total sense, right? Now, imagine a company expects an output of exactly 10,000 units of a product. Having this concrete number brings us nicely to our next tool, the break-even analysis. Break-even analysis calculates the location that produces at the lowest cost for maximum profit. If we plot the fixed and variable costs of 2 locations against that 10,000 unit output, a massive profit gap emerges. Just look at this. Location B yields 8,200 rupees compared to location A's 800. Wow. This analysis proves that choosing a location is essentially a calculated race between fixed and variable costs.
Moving on, we have the center of gravity and transportation models. If a company is running distribution warehouses, well, these models are their absolute secret weapon. They calculate the most cost-effective way to distribute goods from multiple supply centers out to multiple retail destinations, ensuring that transportation costs per unit are kept as low as humanly possible.
Building on that idea is the load distance method. So the crucial point here is this formula: load times distance. By mapping out exact X and Y coordinates, companies calculate how to keep their heaviest, most expensive loads moving across the absolute shortest possible routes. Whether that's a straight line or an actual travel distance, minimizing that movement is key to keeping costs down.
Finally, we have the Delphi method. Because sometimes, raw data just isn't enough. When a location decision involves complex, intangible uncertainties that a spreadsheet just can't solve, companies gather a structured panel of human experts. Through multiple rounds of refining opinions, this method helps identify those hidden, subjective factors so leaders can make a confident final call.
And that wraps up our journey through the strategic funnel of facility location. The next time you see a new factory, a massive warehouse, or even a local hospital opening up, I highly encourage you to look at it through this new lens. Ask yourself, what invisible calculations, weighted factors, and strategic choices brought that facility exactly to your town? Thank you so much for learning with me today on this explainer. Keep observing and keep questioning the design of the world around you.